cold breeze rolled in when the digital clock overhead blinked 6:15. Metal benches stood in silent rows along the platform, their surfaces cold and unforgiving. Sarah pressed her palm against the smooth metal to steady a racing heart. Every breath felt heavy as she clutched a frayed bundle of papers to her chest. Those papers were the remnants of her 5th failed manuscript, each page scarred by red ink and rejection stamps. She remembered the first time she dared to dream of being a writer, the moment her mother handed her an old typewriter and said the power of words could change the world. She had believed her whole life was waiting behind the carriage doors that now clattered on rusty tracks. But each manuscript had been returned with a polite apology, no promise of future consideration. Sarah had poured herself into her stories. She had drawn from every memory of disappointment, from every scar life had left on her. Failure felt like an old friend, showing up at her doorstep with sad eyes and cold hands. But today was different. She did not step away from that familiar comfort. Instead, she walked closer to the edge of the platform and let hope flutter like a bird in her chest. She saw him then, a man in a weathered coat leaning on a walking stick. His eyes tracked the horizon as if he were searching for something lost. He approached without a word and took the seat beside her. A patch of newspaper crumpled beneath his coat shifted as he moved. 20 minutes passed quietly. The distant rumble of an approaching train sounded off. Sarah felt the man's gaze on her papers. He pointed to the top page without speaking. Confused, she met his eyes. He tapped his own chest and then the papers. She blinked. He wanted to know why her heartbeat for these words. For a heartbeat, she froze. Then she placed the pages in his hands. He read in silence. The world narrowed to the rusted tracks and the steady hum of the rails. After a few moments he looked up. These words hurt and healed at the same time. The man spoke softly, voice gravelly, like the tracks beneath them. He spoke of his life. Once a promising musician, he had lost everything to one poor gamble. His hands once coaxed melodies from a bow and strings. Today they trembled with regret. He said life was like a train traveling. On rails we cannot see until we stand close enough. Sarah examined his lined face. He shared stories of risk, of standing at crossroads and choosing where to lay the rails for tomorrow. Each time he chose caution, he found himself stuck at a station he despised. But wildly following every impulse led him into dangerous territory. He asked her what she feared most. She whispered it aloud. Her fear was that no one would ever read her words, that they would vanish like footprints in rain. He smiled sadly. The rails to success are built one tie at a time. Each failure is timber laid for the journey ahead. The rumble grew louder. The man closed the manuscript and placed it gently into her hands. He rose to his feet. Build your rails piece by piece. Accept each failure, he said. Embrace it. Learn from its splintered edges. Sarah watched him disappear into the crowd. She clutched the bundle like a lifeline. She opened her battered notebook and began to write again. Each paragraph a nail driven firmly into the wood. Each sentence a beam securing the track in place. Weeks later, she stood in the lobby of a small publishing house. A slender editor with kind eyes shook her hand and offered a contract. Trembling, Sarah signed her name with careful strokes. The train of her life lurched forward. Rejections became chapters of growth. Every critique was a signal to adjust her course. When doubt crept in, she returned to the platform and the echo of that man's words. Titles and covers changed. Sales began to trickle in. More doors opened. She boarded a train to new cities, reading from her work to small crowds. With each reading, her voice grew stronger. Failures persisted on the journey. An unfavorable review threatened to derail her confidence. A missed deadline nearly crushed her spirit, but she remembered the rails under her feet, invisible but unbreakable. At every station she paused. She examined the ties she had laid. She patched broken beams and secured loose fastenings. She never rushed the process. One crisp morning she returned to that original platform. It seemed smaller now. She placed a hand on the cold metal bench and closed her eyes. She felt gratitude for each scar that had guided her to this moment. A new passenger approached. A young woman carried a similar bundle of papers. Her eyes were heavy with doubt. Sarah offered her a smile. She sat and pointed to the manuscript. When the train arrived, the woman looked up in surprise. Sarah passed the papers into her hands. This time she did not need a man with a walking stick to guide her. She spoke softly. Your mistakes are the rails for your arrival. Trust in them, lay them one by one, and you will find a path forward. The young woman nodded and began to read. Sarah stood, the train pulling into view. She boarded, her heart light. As the train rolled away, she looked back at the platform. It felt less like an end point and more like the start of an infinite journey. Outside the window, tracks stretched into the sunrise. She raised her hand, a silent farewell, and a promise that no failure would ever be the final stop. When she arrived in the next city, she felt ready for the world. She carried every rejection, every doubt, and every small triumph in her heart. They were the rails that would carry her onward, forever guiding her toward horizons she had once only dreamed of. And so her story continued, one rail at a time, bound for destinations unknown, forged from the failures she had learned to love.